right. May I have you call the roll, please?
Trustee Cornell. Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Thomas.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Trustee Vree, may I have the Financial Committee report, please?
Yep. So, Finance Committee, we went through operations of the village through the first 2/3 of the year. And generally, we're in very good shape. General fund revenues are coming in ahead of what we budgeted. Even with the problems happening in Springfield, we are having a good year from construction permits and a good year of car sales. And so both of those are giving us a nice revenue line this year. And at the same time, expenses have been held down as a result of staff pushing off things wherever they can and being prudent in the way we spend. We've had 2 vacancies in the public safety department. And so those things combined are leading to a good year on the general fund. Water fund is the only one where we are running below plan, and that's because of a wet summer. We've been talking about it for a while. We're not at the point where there's no concerns about the level of the water fund, and so it's just been a year of a lot of rain, but nothing needs to change as a result. The other things to consider, the state is still withholding motor fuel tax, use tax, and E911 tax, or revenue, or tax revenue. 2 of those things really aren't, on a month-to-month basis, not terribly significant. If we don't ever see that money, that's where some of the problems come in. Motor fuel tax is to fix roads. We don't have any projects planned currently, but they will come. We typically bank the motor fuel tax revenue and then use it when the projects come up. So if it's delayed, it doesn't necessarily cause an issue, but if it never gets to us, then we could have, then there's discussion around that. E911 is just not a significant line item within our budget. And then use tax is the only general operating fund tax that hits the books. And so while it's a concern, staff has done a very good job of keeping the budget in line, or keeping the expenses in line. And so we've been able to offset it. So as we progress, though, those are things that we are paying attention to. The only other one would be the distributive fund and how much, and whether that, when negotiations actually happen with the budget, whether anything happens on the distributive fund, because that is a more significant source of revenue for the budget. And then finally, we talked about, in light of what's happening in Springfield and the concerns we have around some of our revenue sources, we spent a good deal of time talking about policies for the Finance Committee and making sure that all of those policies allow us to have some flexibility when it comes to managing the finances of the village, so that we can react to anything that comes up relative to what Springfield is doing and how it might affect us. So that's the meeting. That's where we are.
Thank you. With respect to the Committee of the Whole, this evening we discussed, as Trustee Breeze mentioned, we just went over the financial report and discussed it with the Committee of the Whole. We also discussed a listing of the services that the village provides, what are normal services and what are enhanced services, as a beginning on looking into cost and efficiency, and had a discussion on that. Having looked at core and non-core services, we also had a discussion with respect to the recycling contract that is up and is being negotiated. Just a little report on where we're on that, and once that is finished, we'll have more information on that. And that's really what we went over at the Committee of the Whole. I wanted to comment on the continuing saga of our state's budget impasse, because Jonathan, as he mentioned, the financial report and its relationship. Later tonight, Dave Clark will be discussing our proposed tax levy for next year in preparation for our public hearing, which will take place on the tax levy next month. Our residents are properly concerned about why their village property tax bills go up every year, even though the village is only a small part of their property tax bill. The village represents just slightly more than 14% of the total property tax bill. Next year's situation is a perfect illustration of how the real reason that the village's portion of the property taxes are rising as much as they have is the cost of unfunded mandates imposed on the village by the state. The village is already subject to a stringent state-imposed property tax cap. When you cut through all the mathematics of next year's village property tax increase, which Dave will discuss, the village will actually be collecting, excluding taxes for repaying the debt for the stormwater improvements approved by our voters this past election, only about $71,000 more than we collected this year. So it's a very small increase. By contrast, the state just imposed an additional unfunded mandate, increasing our contribution to the public safety pension contribution by over $256,000. That means that we will have at least $184,000 less revenue available for us to apply in providing the key services that the village provides to our residents next year, even after the property tax increase, than we had this year to provide services such as snow plowing, garbage collection, public safety, and the other services that our residents rely on. That type of constant state action is one of the reasons we have been working closely with our state legislators to try and protect local government revenues. Last month, I mentioned that the state had stopped paying, as Jonathan mentioned, the village, the use tax, which the state collects for the village, the motor fuel tax for repair of local roads, and the E911 tax that the state collects on behalf of local governments. Based on our calculation, this will cost the village between now and the end of the fiscal year about $221,000, which is not an insignificant amount. I am a member of the Northwest Municipal Conference's Legislative Committee. In response to our Northwest Municipal Conference efforts, our legislators introduced a bill called House Bill 4305 to restore payment to local governments of the use tax, motor fuel tax, and the 911 tax. On November 10th, the governor said he would sign the bill if passed. But he urged the legislature to also pass funding for several other critical health and public safety needs, including funding for road salt purchases, fuel purchases, and vehicle maintenance for the state police and the Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT. We are told, for example, by IDOT that without this, they may not be able to continue plowing Eden's Expressway as the winter progresses. Last week, the House did pass House Bill 4305 by a vote of 115 to 2. However, Speaker Madigan immediately had his floor leader, Barbara Curry, put a hold on House Bill 4305, so it was never forwarded to the Senate for action, and the Senate is now in recess. We are told by our legislators that the Speaker is afraid the governor is trying to hijack the bill and to add other health and public safety needs within the bill. All of these problems are part of the budget impasse. Former State Senator Susan Garrett has gotten the governor, the Senate President, the House Speaker to agree to meet on December 1st to discuss the budget impasse in an effort to see if they can begin real negotiations. It is hoped that after the Garrett meeting, the Speaker will permit House Bill 4305 to go forward, and that on December 2nd that he will pass it on to the Senate. But it is not clear at this time whether the Speaker will join the governor in trying to reach compromises that avoid injuring local, critical government public safety and health operations. None of our state leaders should act in a way that prevents the one part of government in Illinois, the local governments, that have acted responsibly and are the first line responders in protecting and serving our people from continuing to do our job while they solve the state's budget problems that Springfield has created. As your village board, we must try and plan for all contingencies in our budget process, and we will continue to work with all of our state representatives in hopes a reasonable solution can be found to the state's budget impasse. Alrighty, with that having been said, we have before us the consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants removed from the agenda? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Bree.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to public comment time, and I understand that Carleen Harlow wants to address us about our holiday matters.
I can just have 2 minutes of your time, I'm sure would appreciate it. Thank
You can
very
have all
much.
the time you
In
need.
case, if you can't tell why I'm here, this is not a fashion statement. This is definitely here to ask all of you, well, first to thank all of you from the volunteers and the families that have benefited from all of the holiday drives that have been done in the past. Last year we transitioned some of the intense labor responsibilities from the public safety department and the other village departments to some additional volunteers in the community that have, again, tried to share the responsibilities of the labor involved. So, we're back again this year. Last year was very successful. We're really grateful for everyone's help. But I'm here to solicit help for this year again. And for those of you that may not be aware of all of the different things that can be done, I just happen to have a little list here that I'll give you all a copy so that you'll be able to, not only for yourselves and your own families, but perhaps in your own networking, can pass the word around and make it an even greater year this year than we did last year. Just to give you a couple of statistics, last year we were able to provide food to over 60 households. We were able to give toys and gifts to 40 children. We were able to give 114 food and household supplies to seniors and those adults with disabilities. So we felt, really good about the amount that we were able to get in donations, not just in food, toys, but also financial support. So, I ask you to please, you'll see us in our lovely t-shirts, and they are big to fit over our coats when we're outside of Starbucks and Grand Foods. You'll see us starting, I think, outside Grand Foods this Friday or Saturday after. No, I'm sorry, next Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving, to start with our soliciting for help. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your work.
My chance, happen to have enough things to give you each one. You'll see on the large kiosk our snowman logo, and around town there's small kiosks. I believe this is the same that you see there. I'll just give you an extra one. Pass it out. Thanks. I know, just in case.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
This is very important work, and thank you, Carly, for your chipping in and doing it. Without your help, it wouldn't get done.
Well, I have to say, we can only be as successful as what's been done in the past. Katie Sweeney and as I said, the village departments, the administration has been amazing. Doesn't happen unless you have everybody working together, and that's what we're doing.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to address the board on a matter not on the agenda? Okay, the next item is the village manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. The one thing I'll note before Colleen leaves, I was told yesterday that this is one of the only programs like it on the North Shore, and that has such a high amount of community support, and it really is a wonderful way to support the local community and our surrounding, immediate surrounding community. So we have a link on the village's website as well of all of the information relative to the holiday drive and ways people can help. And they can write checks to the village and put holiday drive on the memo line, and we will make sure that those dollars get delivered off to them. So thank you for all of the work that you guys do.
One more thing I forgot to say, yesterday was the employee luncheon, and it was an amazing, again, outpour of generosity from the village employees. $592 was collected for, our startup fees for this year. So we thank all the village employees as well.
Excited to be able to help. I'm going to get started with my report this evening by asking Public Safety Director Carrie Lewandowski to give us just a brief update relative to the recent string of car burglaries that have been impacting Glencoe and some of our neighboring communities.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. I just wanted to spend a few minutes to make the board aware, as well as the community, of a vehicle burglary pattern we've had over the last 4 to 6 weeks. Actually, it's 2 separate patterns. In mid-October, we had 7 vehicles were targeted because they had radar detectors visibly on the dashboard or mounted to the front windshield. In 5 of those cases, the cars were actually broken into, and the other 2, the vehicles were left unlocked. And the offenders got inside, stole the radar detectors and any other valuables that were in there, cell phones, loose change, things of that nature. And then in early November, we had a second little pattern where 11 vehicles were targeted. The interesting thing about this pattern is all 11 of the vehicles were left parked and unlocked overnight. And as we were reviewing those cases, it became apparent that the simple act of locking your car would have prevented a lot of these crimes from happening. So we had 11 cars were broken into, and 2 vehicles were actually stolen because all the vehicles were left unlocked, and the 2 that were stolen also had the car keys inside the vehicle. So when we realized all this, obviously we put out press releases in local media and we posted things on our website, but my goal here tonight is just make the community more aware that the simple act of locking your car, hiding your valuables on the inside of it will reduce these crimes and make them go away. And a case in point is in one of our cases, we had 2 cars parked in a driveway. One was locked and one was unlocked. The locked car wasn't tampered with at all. They entered the unlocked car and stole some valuables out of it. So and it's apparent that this crew is just walking down the streets at night trying door handles on cars. If it's unlocked, they'll steal what they can. If it's locked, they go on to the next car. So again, my goal here tonight is to make sure that everyone's aware that, please secure your car, hide your valuables if they're in the car, and please don't leave your keys inside your car because your car will easily be stolen. And of course, which is always in play here, is if you see or hear anything suspicious, anytime, day or night, call 911, we'll respond and we'll investigate accordingly. Thank you.
One question, Director. It's my understanding that with respect to at least part of the crew that's functioning here, that your officers, along with Highland Park, did in fact get 3 of the people involved.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, one of the vehicles that was stolen was recovered at a location on the south side of Chicago, and detectives had set up a surveillance in an area where they were known to be returning with stolen vehicles. And we recovered our stolen vehicle there, made an arrest of 3 individuals, along with the Chicago police. And it's apparent that this is a very large group of theft offenders that are targeting the entire Chicagoland area. And we were lucky enough to arrest 3 of them, but there's still more of them out there. Luckily, our pattern has slowed down since that arrest, but I don't take any solace in the fact that they won't be back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. I want to just report briefly on our leaf collection program. We completed this week our 5th pass through the community. The program does run through the end of next week. I think next Friday is our last collection day, the day after Thanksgiving. We will have crews throughout the community collecting those last leaves. One note I wanted to make that I don't think is often talked enough about the village for a number of years has had an intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Botanic Garden. One way that we have been able to continue this program has been the ability for the village to actually deliver all of the leaves that we collect to the Botanic Garden. It then processes those leaves, and they are made into mulch and are used throughout the Botanic Garden over the subsequent year. I like that fact simply because it's a wonderful highlight of the village's recycling efforts and how those efforts are actually managed here locally. I think a lot of people probably have no idea where those leaves go after they get collected from the curb, and part of the reason we're able to continue to do this from a cost savings perspective is that the garden continues to allow us to deliver those leaves. We in turn provide them ambulance and fire service for their 1 million visitors a year. We've delivered so far, Dave tells me, about 4,000 cubic yards of leaves, with probably at least another 1,000 to 1,500 to go, maybe more, depending
3,000
on...
to 4,000.
Yeah, so a lot more in the next week. But we have worked together very closely, and I think it's a great example of a local recycling program that you might not think of. Public Works right now, unfortunately, is also focusing some time and effort getting ready for what may be our first snow of the season. That's being predicted for Friday night into Saturday. We're hoping it's to be on the low end of maybe a 2 to 4 inch episode. Some other parts of Chicagoland are being told they may see as many as 10 inches. I'm hoping everyone's wrong and it's rain. But I may not be that lucky. I have holiday lights still to put up on my trees in front of my house, so snow makes that a little bit less fun. But as I mentioned, last collection will be next Friday. I was going to have Assistant Village Manager Sharon Tanner just give a brief update and status on things with our citizen satisfaction survey.
Okay, I think this is on. If not, I can speak loudly. To date, our survey, our community-wide survey, has had a great response. Our survey consultant, ETC, has collected over 350 responses, and they're continuing to collect responses until we reach a statistically significant response rate, and then after that, they'll continue to collect and analyze results that come in from that. And we appreciate the time that residents have taken to complete the survey. It's very important feedback for us. And our hope is that in December, we'll have a report and summary of the survey results to review with the board of the committee of the whole.
Thanks, Sharon. Real quickly, beginning in December, the Finance Committee is going to commence its review of the draft fiscal 2017 budget. The full village board is encouraged to attend that first Finance Committee meeting on this topic, which will be Tuesday, December 15th, beginning at 6 p.m. A couple of special events to remind the community of. The official Glencoe kickoff to the holiday season, the Light the Village Lights ceremony, will take place next Friday, November 27th, at the corner of Park and Vernon Avenues, beginning at 5 p.m. The big switch will be switched on, and our holiday lights will come alive. Staff from both the village and the park district have been busy getting our trees in the downtown ready, and there are additional events that will be sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce that will take place through the weekend and the holiday season. One of those is our downtown merchants will be celebrating Small Business Saturday on Saturday, November 28th. A full listing of a series of deals and discounts being offered by our downtown businesses is available on the village's website, and will also be included in an insert in the Glencoe Quarterly that will be arriving in mailboxes very early next week. It's a great opportunity to patronize our businesses. I'm excited that our local businesses are participating in what has now become a national event over the last few years, and there are whole lot of them that are participating. We've posted that to our website. We will also make sure that's listed on the village's Facebook page and other social media outlets. Exciting thing to announce every year for me, and unfortunately she wasn't able to join us this evening, is our annual Employee of the Year. Yesterday at our Employee Appreciation Luncheon that we hold each year the week before Thanksgiving, I had the honor of announcing that Margie Ziegler, our Payroll and Benefits Coordinator, was named the 2015 Employee of the Year. Margie has been with the village since 2011, and in that time has proven herself to be a standout employee in many ways. Comments in all three of her nominations highlighted her positive attitude, her dedication to her job and to the village, her innovative approach to process, and the way she greets each day with a smile. There was one particular statement that was made that just, I think, epitomizes Margie in many ways. And I'll read directly from that nomination. Margie is faced with an environment of people with different backgrounds and sometimes even different languages, but the language she speaks very well is humility and compassion, which is understood and appreciated by all. I wish she was here this evening so you could all give her a round of applause. She's one of Dave's employees in the finance department, and I know he's very proud of her and what she's been able to do. And she really has taken on many, many roles, which clearly are being underscored by the 3 nominations she received from her colleagues and peers. So I want to congratulate Margie. She hates standing in front of people, but we did get her to stand next to me for a few seconds and snap a picture. And she was very surprised by the honor. So I wanted to make sure to note that. And with that, that is my report for this evening, unless there are any questions. I will do that.
Trustee Miller, did we have a plan commission meeting this month?
We did. We actually met 2 or 3 times, possibly. Mostly it was at the Glencoe Historical Society, where they have been doing a lot of research on the work that Frank Lloyd Wright and Jens Jensen both did around 100 years ago in planning for the village of Glencoe. So we learned a lot of interesting things, and the way that it'll inform our work is that we generally try to look at history as foundational, not as something to hold us back, but something to build on and inform what we do now. One of the things that I personally found most striking is how seriously they took planning back then. They created the Plan Commission basically in its current form, with people representing all of the different arenas of the village. And they were very forward-thinking. So I do commend their exhibit to all of you. But that's most of what we did. So I don't really have anything else to add to what Chairman Thomas reported on last month.
Thank you. I understand we did not have a golf meeting.
We did not. There were conflicts by several people, and our next meeting will be in December as scheduled, and among other things, we will be considering the capital projects for the following year. I would say that the weather finally was helpful to golf, so that October was a fairly dry month, and our revenues exceeded our budget in green fees and power cards. November, it's hard to believe now, but in the first part of November was also very favorable to golf. We had 1,000 bonus rounds just in November, which has helped to make up in part for the lousy weather we had for much of the rest of the golf season. The bottom line, as is typical, is we've exceeded the budget in revenues, and we are below the budget in expenses for the year.
Excellent. Stella continues to do her phenomenal performance. Alrighty, the next order of business is a very nice one. We have a vacancy on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm nominating tonight Greg Turner to fill that vacancy. Greg has, for the past several years, attended each of their meetings and been very much involved as a citizen at large in what they're doing. He's a very active member of the Glencoe Historic Society and played a major role in their work in honoring the Ravine Bluffs area and their Frank Lloyd Wright program, and a very outstanding resident of Glencoe. And do I hear a motion to approve his nomination?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Excellent. Greg is now a member of the commission. Another opportunity tonight, one of the nice things that we get to do from time to time is to have proclamations honoring a resident. Tonight, we have a proclamation that proposed before us to honor a very outstanding former president of the village and a wonderful resident of the village of Glencoe, Roland Calhoun. And it's about to be his 90th birthday. So our proclamation is, whereas Roland Calhoun was born to Blanche Hereford Calhoun and James Kent Calhoun in 1925 and will be celebrating his 90th birthday on November 30th. And whereas Roland Calhoun grew up in the family home at 740 Greenwood Avenue, and after marrying his wife Shirley, I always call her his lovely wife Shirley, in 1950, they lived at 773 Greenwood Avenue and 794 Greenwood Avenue before moving to 150 Maple Hill Road in 1965, where they raised their 5 children in Glencoe. And whereas Roland Calhoun has been a tireless promoter of Glencoe throughout his entire life, and his community involvement involved Glencoe Park District Board member and president, Village of Glencoe president from 1968 to 1976, lifelong member of the Glencoe Union Church with service on every church committee and a lifelong choir member. And whereas Roland Calhoun has been active in downtown Glencoe and village festivities, being a fixture in the Glencoe Patriotic Day celebration, including the 4th of July parade, riding his early 20th century bicycle in the parade for decades, was a co-owner of the Village Smithy Restaurant, which opened in August of 1977 with his brother James Kent Calhoun Jr. and Barbara and Bill Lipman. And whereas Roland Calhoun is one of only 2 multi-generation Glencoe families that have served as village president, with his father, James Kent Calhoun, having been village president from 1908 to 1909, and whereas Roland Calhoun has seamlessly continued the legacy of his parents and grandparents, who cumulatively were founders of the Glencoe Union Church, the Skokie Country Club, the Women's Library Club, and he served on the school board, the village board of trustees, and as village president. And whereas Roland Calhoun's 90th birthday is celebrated by commemorating his lifelong contributions, which have enhanced the life and atmosphere of the village of Glencoe through his passion, enthusiasm, and enduring volunteerism. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board and the president of the village of Glencoe express on behalf of all citizens of the village their appreciation to Roland Calhoun for his outstanding service to the community. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Among the announcements and things for this evening, I wanted to mention that our village's Interfaith Thanksgiving service will be this Sunday, November 22nd at 7 p.m. at Sacred Heart Church. I also wanted to mention, just to make sure everybody knew, that there had been a rumor that I learned of today that one of our very wonderful restaurants in in Glencoe that borders on Winnetka that Frank and Betsy's was going out of business, but that rumor is totally untrue. Actually, O'Neill's is going out of business. And so I encourage everybody to continue, and if you haven't been there, to go there and enjoy the outstanding food and wine at Frank and Betsy's. The other announcement is our next meeting is December the 17th. All right, any other business? Okay. Our next matter is consideration of an ordinance amending section 9-10 and 9-16 of the village code regarding building permits time limit extensions. And I will ask Dave Mao to fill us in on that change.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. President. Just as a matter of review for the board and for the public present, in 2005, the village adopted a village code provision that established time limits for a building permit. A building permit expires after 6 months of issuance if work has not commenced, and it expires after 15 months if a certificate of occupancy has not been issued. The code permits staff to grant a permit extension of 6 months upon payment of a permit extension fee in the amount of 33% of the original building permit. As discussed with the board at the Committee of the Whole meeting on October 15th, in recent months, staff has received several requests from building permit holders seeking relief and consideration from the full permit extension fee for 2 types of hardships. One in which the permit holder states the need for less than 6 months to complete the project, and one in which there's been a complete work stoppage on the project, in some cases many months, as a result of a default of the general contractor. The current language in the village code does not provide the village the flexibility or the discretion to provide relief in either circumstance. Working with the village attorney following the Committee of the Whole meeting last month, a draft amendment to the code is presented in an ordinance to you tonight to provide some consideration for each of these potential hardships. The draft amendment will still require an applicant to continue the practice of paying the full extension fee of 33% of the original permit cost, but the extension fee will now be held in escrow. If the applicant is able to complete the work prior to the 6th month after issuance of the permit extension, the village will refund a portion of the permit extension fee to the applicant in the amount prorated by the number of full months remaining in the permit extension. In the case of circumstances that were outside the permit holder's control and or were not reasonably foreseen through normal due diligence, the proposed amendment to the code would allow the applicant to petition the village staff for a permit tolling extension. Unforeseen circumstances can include, but are not limited to, strikes or labor disputes, default or bankruptcy of a general contractor, or extraordinary weather conditions. An approved permit tolling extension would freeze the permit time frame for a period of time as a result of that uncontrollable circumstance. The applicant would be required to apply for the permit tolling extension as soon as reasonably possible after the uncontrollable circumstances have subsided. And in that application, provide evidence that the construction was attempted and work was permitted, and the permitted work was proceeded with due diligence, and also must be able to provide evidence of what that constrainment specifically was. The staff would have the authority, as the ordinance is drafted, to approve a lesser permit tolling period than requested. As with existing code language, the proposed amendment does not place a limit on the number of permit extensions that can be applied for a single project. There's no change proposed to this because it's been staff's experience since the adoption of the original permit time regulations in 2005 that there are very few projects that have required more than one permit extension. Again, overall, the intent of the modifications is to provide some opportunity for relief to homeowners attempting in good faith to complete these projects. and staff is confident that the changes as proposed will not result in any further hardship to neighbors, nor will they in any way incentivize a longer time construction timeframe. With that, the staff would recommend the board consider the ordinance as drafted. The village attorney is present as well tonight to help answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? May I hear a motion to adopt the ordinance change?
Second?
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Pierce, trustee Thomas,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
Thank you. The next matter of business before us is consideration of a resolution authorizing the purchase of a new sprinkler control system for the Glencoe Golf Course. Stella, would you tell us about that?
Yes. You've all received a memorandum that details the need for these new control system boxes, but I'll just briefly go over some of the highlights. Our existing control boxes are 20 years old, and we are having issues with them, with their functionality. The new boxes would be more efficient, save us water, time, and money. We would have more control over irrigation, the heads when they start and stop, and a lot more flexibility with the programming, especially the remote control feature where our superintendent can be at home and actually stop the program if a storm rolls in or something like that, and we have a program planned for, a 4 a.m. start. He usually has to get on the phone, and we have to get somebody to go over there and physically turn it off. This would allow him to do that remotely. So that is the main reason that we want to do this. There's only 2 companies that actually provide the services, and the one that we are recommending was the lower of the 2, and also included an extra program for our computer in the superintendent's office. So without any questions, we would recommend that the board authorize the purchase of the 11 new satellite pedestals with the radio remote control for an not to exceed purchase price of $47,620.
Any questions?
Yeah, does the system operate automatically, or does it sense water?
It is programmed, so it is not based on a sensor. So there are certain programs, the greens, the tees, and the fairways are all on different programmable heads. So that's where the remote control comes in, because it's not based on the
Got
weather.
it, so that if it rains, then you can
Right, so
turn it off.
we turn it off, right?
Any other questions?
Yes, one question. The price of the other vendor, was there a significant difference, and was there a rationale for one over the other?
The superintendent's preference was with this brand. It wasn't an enormous difference in the pricing, but he preferred them, and they also included the office upgrade to the computer, which is an $8,000 value.
Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve?
It's actually a motion to approve the resolution that's in the package.
Right.
I so moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Thomas,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
Okay, the next order of business is the preliminary consideration of the 2015 tax levy ordinance that Dave is going to present, as promised earlier when I was talking about the problems with the state budget. So Dave, tell us about the ordinance.
Last but not least, presented for the board's initial consideration is the 2015 tax levy ordinance, which was reviewed by the finance committee at their November 17th meeting. At the October 15th meeting, the 2015 tax levy was scheduled for official public hearing at the December board meeting. The numbers that I will be reviewing are the numbers that will be included in the ordinance. There are certain aspects of the process that related to the assessed valuation that the final numbers of the extended levy will not be known until June of next year, due to the fact that the 2015 EAV won't be established until then. The tax levy includes a total of $13,262,675, which is a 0.86% increase over the extended taxes from last year, or $113,639. The amount that's being requested is the amount that's eligible under property tax extension limitation law. The CPI increase for that is 0.76. As far as the cap portion, which is the amount that's really subject to property tax extension limitation law, the increase that is included there is $143,000 or 1.55%. And as President Levin mentioned, there's one item in the budget, one line item that is greater than the entire increase of property taxes this year. The levy includes the extension for debt service. It includes that extension with a figure that is based upon what the 100% of the actual debt service requirement is. If the village board doesn't take any further action, the county will actually levy an extra 5% loss in collection factor on that, which is not typically reduced. And what the village board typically does in most years is to adopt an abatement ordinance, which is considered in January, to reduce the amount of that's being asked for the extension of debt service. Without the abatement, if that figure is not abated or lowered, the actual increase would be it would be 192,000 instead of 113,000, or 1.46% from the 2014 levy. The amount of the abatement that would be available, that 5% factor, is about $78,000. And again, following review and the public hearing and adoption of the 2015 tax levy in December, village staff would be presenting abatement options at the January village board meeting. With that, I'd entertain any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, David. All right, the next order of business is to consider a motion to go into closed session under section 2C5 to consider the purchase or lease of real property for use by the village of Glencoe. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney?
Yes.
Trustee Pierce?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Vree?
Yes.